and Simone.
Yes, we're coming in here. Hi, thank you, Max, for introducing us and this event. Welcome, everybody. Few known faces, and very happy to see a lot of unknown faces. We're going to squeeze you into 20 minutes of very Web3 new tech content. And please do, if we go too fast, let us know in the chat. We will respond to it. But we really want to give space for the specific questions that you have. So we're going to give the presentation a very only 20 minutes. And we really want to get the interaction going with you. So my name is Marieke. The LinkedIn is can be found in the chat. And I'm first going to talk about Web3. Web stands for the internet. And I think some of you and maybe everybody, and I'm actually curious if there's anyone in this call who does not remember and recall this feeling where you were sort of opening up or actually pushing a big button where your computer would start running and you would have this this feel. Well, this feel is Web 1. Now, we also know that most of us probably left Facebook. Maybe some of you are still in Facebook, but Facebook is very much Web 2. And then this is an NFT, which stands for a non-fungible token, which has everything to do with Web3 and with blockchain and with tokens. And it's a strong indication of how Web3 is really changing the way the economy and we actually interact with each other is changing rapidly. So if you put it, this is a graph that you can find on the internet. It's just a very basic explanation that we're going. So you can see a timeline underneath, right? We started in Web 1, where we would only sort of read stuff on the internet. Then we would come to Web 2, where we could also write. So we would actually send emails. And maybe a fun fact is that here at Science Park, Amsterdam, the first email in the world that was sent from the US was received here at Science Park in Amsterdam. And now we're entering this Web 3. And actually, you can debate about it forever. We like to debate about it a lot, and we do. But it basically comes down to that you can now actually execute business processes over the internet. So we can move value over the internet. And we were not able to do that before. So this is come crypto. This has come a new economy that is always, well, I think often remembered with Bitcoin, but there's a lot more to it. And non-fungible tokens are very interesting. And what we're going to talk about for the rest of this remaining is it's all in this Web3 space. Now, just I think a strong remark is that most of us and most of our work and our lives is in Web 2. And those who are really into the metaverse, changing tokens are in Web 3, but it's a small part of our economy to date. Why should we be interested in Web 3 for food? I think this is a picture everybody can relate to, right? It doesn't matter whether you are in Lima or actually Simone is in the rural areas of Peru. You have the same feeling when you enter a shop. You have no idea what you're buying. This is not about sort of the vast supply that you have, right? That's sort of difficult choice to make between brand A, B, or C. But the thing is here, actually, that you have no idea what you're buying. 1/3 of olive oil in a Dutch retailer is actually fake olive oil. It's edible oil, so it doesn't do any harm, but it is not what you think it is. So the first reason why, if you work in food, you should be interested in Web3 is that it can really help customers understand what they're buying and what they're consuming, or you as a person yourself. The second reason why you should be interested in Web3 is because we need to digitize our administration. Agri-food is the least digitized industry of all industries in the world. And this is a picture. I've been working in compliance processes in agri-food for more than 15 years, 15. And this is very much the case, right? There's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of phone calls. There's a lot of sort of very undigitized information going up and down. And if you realize that food is actually, you know, that's the #1 game. So next to air and water, we need food. It's ridiculous that we haven't put the attention to digitize this as we should have been doing. So reason 1, consumers. Reason 2, supply chain. And this is reason 3. And this is really, we're entering in a whole new world. Nobody really yet knows what it's going to be, right? A few years ago, we were all sort of, when the mobile phones were introduced by Steve Jobs and the likes, we were very reluctant to think that these things were going to turn our lives up and down. And if you now look at your 2-year-old scrolling down the internet as if it's an encyclopedia when you're doing your PhD, that's a new world that we entered, right? So reason number 3, it is real, it is happening, it is being implemented, and it's changing the way we work. So as our really call to action to everybody in the meeting here, and there are a lot of people who work and in food and in Web3, maybe they can sort of identify themselves in the chat. We really need to put our hands together and digitize the global food system as fast as we can, because we need not only to save the globe, but also to give everybody access to healthy food and a sustainable planet. So that is all we're going to say about Web3. Now, open food chain. The reason why we started open food chain is because we see this huge lack in results in terms of adoption of Web3 technologies in agri-food. Open Food Chain is actually a foundation. So our journey into blockchain and food started in 2016-17. And I see a few people in the call here that were with us at that time. We then started off with the new fork, and then everything now is evolving into the Open Food Chain Foundation. And the reason why we do that is we want to collaborate and we want to sort of make the crowd bigger and get more results. Now, in the board, you see a collection of venture capitalists. Everybody has a background in agri-food, except one who is a real seasoned software entrepreneur. And in the advisory board, you see a lot of food people, but also, for example, the World Bank and somebody who worked at IBM's Food Trust. Now, Open Food Chain is a foundation, but it has a business model, and this is often a question that we get. So to take that question out of the road, is we have 2 income streams. There's a SaaS revenue. This means software as a service. So as we roll out the Web3 technology that we call Open Food Chain, there is a business model where participants on the supply chain, they pay a fee. It's free for farmers, but the bigger companies like the Refrescos, which is the biggest bottler of the world, they pay an administration fee, and that pays 70% of our bills. The other 30% is actually paid by public funding, because what we do establishes healthy food for a healthy planet. Now, that's all still lots of words, but what it really means in practice is that Open Food Chain basically builds product passports. So if you have like a bottle that I have here, you can scan the bottle and you can understand the ingredients of that bottle and where things come from. That delivers 2 things. First of all, ESG proofs. If you want to understand ESG, in my wording, it's the new sustainability agenda, or it's the old sustainability agenda. It stands for environmental, social, and governance. So a lot of supply chain risks that I think most of you know. And that really generates a lot of efficiency. So it gets away with the paperwork, it automates a lot of processes, and it makes life easier and actually more healthy and more fun for everybody. Now, how are we different to a lot of the other blockchain implementations that we see in food? We make a comparison here with VChain, with IBM, with OriginTrail and Morpheus. And this also is really the reason why we actually started to build Open Food Chain only in 2019, is that we saw that the existing platforms have a business model that doesn't fit agri-food. So instead of adding the profitability to the agri-food companies, software often adds another business model, taking away margins from the agri-food industry. So we designed a technology and architecture that has no transaction costs. So you can track and trace endless volumes of food, and your bills that you pay, so your admin fee doesn't change. It's a fixed fee. Now, we have a lot of people in the call who can answer lots of technical questions on this. But basically, the cost was the key reason for us to start building Open Food Chain. Now, interoperability is really our number one agenda point, and this is really why we invite you to interact with us and to actually build with us. So I saw Ripe on the call here. Ripe is another blockchain, and I'm really keen, Phil, to see if we can do stuff together, and everybody else, of course. And then the third one is really farm friendliness. My background is in agri-food. I once started with something that you would now call computer science in Wageningen University, a university in the Netherlands that's focused on agriculture. And we think Web3 and technology really needs to understand its supply chain. And that is also why we're organized in supply chain parallels. Now, just one word on the technology. So we are public layer 1 blockchain, and that means that it's an open and public interface where people can join without having to get permission from anyone. So it means that it's decentralized. It means that it's actually accessible for anyone who wants to access it. And it's also verifiable by anyone who wants to verify. And this is important because we actually think that we should open up this whole compliance world, I'd say, where you want media, you want NGOs, you want other people to go and check if claims that are being made are actually true and actually hold the basis of reality. So this is basically our architecture. I know it's a lot of tech for some of you, so I'm going to skip to the practical part. So Open Food Chain you can sort of see as the white label that we develop with a small core team, mainly here in Amsterdam, but also in Greece, in Bali, in different parts of the world. We to date have 5 implementations that are steaming up. The first one that we started off with is Juicy Chain. I'll briefly show how that works. Then we started with the chefs, the guys who make our meals in the restaurants in the catering world. We launched the blockchain burger that I will also quickly show. And then it's olive oil, fish, and cacao. And the main focus of today is, as you can see on our backgrounds, cacao. And Simone will talk more about that. Our aim is to have 30 agri-food supply chains onboarded on Open Food Chain by 2026. Now, briefly, the blockchain burger, this is a chef chain. If you all grab your phones and you try and aim it at your screen, you should be able to get access to what we call the blockchain burger. And we developed this together with chefs. So we see chefs as sort of the influencers of our food system. So they are able to influence the way we think about our food and actually the way how we interact with food. So the blockchain burger was launched here last year. We had a physical burger that actually was an edible burger. And you would have this QR code and you could see where all ingredients come from. So all the farmers, they upload the data directly into the blockchain. And you can see all 9 ingredients, where they're coming from, how they are produced. And next to the normal nutritional information, we also added food miles and CO2, as according to changing regulation in the European Union, everybody will have to start reporting on ESG in their supply chain. So that's one example. Now, our first example was, as I said, Juicy Chain. And it's not available in the shops yet. But however, there are 10 big companies who are already in production on Juicy Chain. Juicy Chain is a foundation as well. It's been headed by Refresco and Ekes Granini, 2 of the biggest players in the juice industry. They paid for the main infrastructure together. And now for every other party to join, it actually has a very low entry fee. And for farmers and companies who can't afford access, it's actually for free. So if you scan this code, you enter the unique codes of that particular bottle, you go to a product passport. And I think today we have many examples of great product passports. And you can see in this case exactly where the apples are coming from, where they're bottled, which companies were involved, how they did that. And the particular issue here is what certificates were added to that. Now, this is a lot about Open Food Chain and Web3, and then we have MiCacao. And very briefly, what we are doing in the cacao chain. So it is from Latin America. Simone will tell you more about that later. But basically, we go from this very chaotic inaccessible supply chain where, you know, goods are moving, but data is not moving, and data is not attached to the goods, to a reality where everyone in the supply chain, starting from farmers in the Amazons, are uploading data to a public data infrastructure, and everybody can then access that information. And I think I'll keep it at this and give the floor to Simone to talk about what all is in our hearts, chocolate and cacao.
Okay, thank you, Marieke. Hello, everybody. Simone Ransijn is my name, here from Peru. I work for Helvetas. And we have this project MiCacao together with Open Food Chain. And we have also partners here in Peru, CIMA Cordillera Azul and EEQ in Colombia. And that's why it's financed by the German corporation GIZ. And it's really necessary to do this because of three things. One, there's a new regulation from the European Union on deforestation. So various commodities, but also cacao, needs to comply zero deforestation standards. And that's why we need to innovate in traceability for forest monitoring or deforestation monitoring. And the second reason is something we have been working on for years, like to solve poverty. Actually, cacao here in Latin America in most parts was introduced to replace coca production. And actually, it doesn't really solve economic perspective. So we have been working on that, and certification schemes don't really solve the problem. So we need to innovate and look how to improve farm income. And we also need regenerative agriculture and improve the carbon footprint of our food production, also in cacao. So we need to improve, innovate in payment for environmental services. And so this is really, really short. 3 reasons why we are working on this. Thank you, Marieke.
Excellent. So it's back to Max.
Yeah, thank you very much, Simone and Marieke, for your presentation. We have covered Web3 for food, Open Food Chain, and a bit of the MiCacao project. And now it's time for your questions. So it's time for the Q&A. I just sent in the chat that you can start asking any question that you want. We already have more than 20 questions in the meetup link. So I will start with a question that Richard made. I don't know if Richard is in the call. I was checking if he was. I didn't see him. But he asked, what is the roadmap that traditional organizations follow to become Web3 ready, and especially within the food industry?
Yeah, great question. So let me take that one. This is really about how you can adopt this new internet that is evolving. And first of all, I would say go to these type of meetups, really read up, get understanding of what it means. There's a lot of free material. There's no need to pay for stuff. It's available. We have a YouTube where you can find lots of information, and maybe we can drop some links in here. But the first step is to really read up. What is the Web3? And then start to talk to people who understand Web3, right? So go and speak to your IT department. Go and speak to people who you know are working on the edge of technology or who are tech focused. And definitely reach out to the community here. We also have a Telegram group that's very easy to access, and you can ask any question there, and we are keen to help. So my key answer to this is get yourself geared up using the Web3, the internet. There's a lot of free information, and get in touch with people who work on in the area, Max.
Okay, so we go to the next question that I am reading here in the meetup. So various people asked the same question, which was, what does MiCacao offer as a project, and how will you work together? Especially, how will you work together, etc. I don't know if Marieke or Simone, you can give more information on that.
Yes. We are a team of 4 organizations: Open Food Chain, Helvetas, EEQ Colombia, and CIMA Cordillera Azul. So we are very close to the farmers who are going to have to use the solution, and also have been working for years with traders in the field, and so we are working with them together to see how they're using their existing systems are going to be interoperable with the solution Open Food Chain is building. So we are coordinating very closely on the whole subject. Firstly, we will pilot, and after everything is working, we are going to scale up to 4,000 producers.
Okay, perfect. I see the first 2 questions in the chat, but before that, I also have another question made by Tomas in the meetup, and he said, I would like to get to know members and participate in closing the gap of local food. I have an idea of what Open Food Chain does, but not entirely. I would like to know if there are any projects or people interested in working with microgreens.
Yeah. Yeah, great question. I think this whole this touches the whole local to local agenda, and cacao is a great example of local to global, right? Let's have a very clear distinction. So the greens, the microgreens, I think that's meant to serve local restaurants and households. That is exactly why we developed the blockchain burger. So to show that you can have blockchain, and Web3 definitely adds value to very localized supply chains, where it becomes easier for farmers to sell, of course, but you can do that on Web2. You don't need Web3 for that, but you can then have reliable information. And when you talk about microgreens, there's a lot of nutrients in there. So it's a good reason to have immutable information and actually a proof of truth in there.
And apart from this, I also want to recommend that we have a Telegram channel with more than 160 people, experts on agri-food. So maybe you could also find interesting people in there, Tomas. I will send the link here of the Telegram. And yeah, so let's start with some questions of the chat. So for example, La Gloria Valencia asked, what kind of support do you give to cacao producers? Thanks from Colombia. What kind of support? So
maybe I can answer that question. We are just about talking about the MiCacao project. We will capacitar, what's it called? The workshops with, we will train the 4,000 farmers on the use of the solution. And not only the male, also the female, and we have a huge gender target also in the project. But they will be trained to use the technology, and we will most of all keep it simple, because they're not always very used to use technology. So we also need to solve some technical problem, but we are so lucky that there's more and more internet access in rural areas here, which is fantastic.
That's great news. Well, I see more questions here. So Nelson Joseph Minto said, as a producer, how does Web3 technology help us, since most of our products and services are tangible? That's the question by Nelson.
I'm keen to get that. Yeah, so this is again a really good question, because there are 2 challenges in Web3 to date. The blockchain and Web3 does not yet fix, and that is data input quality and the physical digital fit. So how do you assure that your digital product passport is attached to your physical product? And there are a lot of new technologies that make that very easy and more financiable, or that really make it affordable. So at first, what actually everybody should do is really start accessing the mobile phones that a lot of the farmers today use, with Web3 services, right? So I think the mobile phone is the most direct answer to get connections there and start that integrating into your architectures and strategies.
Okay, I see here that Carlota Costa, she wants to know more about how the OFC tokenomics works, and if we could have time to discuss it briefly. Marieke, do you think, yeah, I think that it's for you, this question.
Yeah, can you repeat it?
Yeah, sure. I would be interested in understanding how the OFC tokenomics works, if we have time to discuss it briefly.
Yeah, so we do have an FAQ, so frequently asked question section on the Open Food Chain website. I actually put a link in the chat, and that has an explanation how it works. Now, I think for tokenomics, we should do a separate session, a separate sort of meetup or Ask Me Anything session on purely or tokenomics, because it's very deep Web3. And I think for a lot of people, they will sort of, tune out. So drop your name here if you're interested in our tokenomics, and we can set up a separate session for that.
Okay, I see now Marvin, he wrote, I can see that this is very beneficial for producers of responsible food that want to give insight in their products. Most of the food, especially in the hospitality, is still handled with pesticides, etc., and is still harmful for us. Is it also the goal of OFC of becoming a label of healthy food? And if so, how would you convert these suppliers?
Yes, yeah, that again is a super good question. I mean, our ideal world is where the whole compliance industry and sort of the whole certification process and checks and balances is much more efficient. And that Open Food Chain is actually the infrastructure that is the basis for having reliable information on the use of pesticides. So that's definitely the aim and the plan. And we then interact with, you want actually auditors to sign off on an open public blockchain infrastructure, rather than to have this very sort of centralized system where nobody really knows, how the process works when a farmer gets a certificate. I think that it really can do with an open public infrastructure, and we hope that Open Food Chain can provide that to give you certainty on what you eat and what you produce.
Okay, we have 5 more questions here in the chat. Thanks all for asking different questions. I see Puman here. He says, good initiative to bring information to consumers. And what is the incentive and benefit for farmers to provide this data? What's the incentive for farmers?
Yes, Simona, I guess.
Yeah, good question. But we now have this regulation from the European Union, and if we don't give information on where the cacao is grown and since when it has been deforested, the land, it doesn't go to market. So actually, there's no choice. Yeah, it's like a negative incentive. But what we are working on is to see how to integrate other solutions. So what I explained in the presentation was we don't only work on compliance for zero deforestation in order to meet the requirements of the European Union. And in this case, it's not only the European Union, there's many places working on the same regulations. But we are also looking for compliance with the living income price. So the consumer can see it and can decide on this. And I'm sure this is going to be, we're going to be able to make this a bigger issue. Because once it's transparent, you can see what's the price which is paid to the producer and how much of the price you are paying as a consumer is getting to all the rest of the people in the supply chain, and everybody will see it's a really strange distribution. And it's really a small difference to pay a little bit more to the producer. It makes a super big difference for them. And at the same time, once this infrastructure is up, and the producer is connected, there can be all kinds of traffic. So we can also give an extra to cacao which comes from regenerative agriculture farms, or from reforested farms, or whatever. You lower carbon footprint is also something we really want to work on, because the cacao grows with a big shell, and if you compost that, 90% of the carbon footprint, it's even more, 94% of the carbon footprint in the whole production chain reduces, which is enormous. The contamination of just throwing this cacao pod on the land. So this kind of measures could also, with this solution, generate an income for the farmer. So there's a lot of secondary possibilities which are actually super exciting for us to work on. And if you have any ideas or inspirations or whatever, it's super welcome, and to co-create.
Yeah, and maybe if I can add to that, Max, on the consumer side, so the interest for consumers, so by and large at global level, and this is different in Asia than in Europe, than in Latin America, but the majority of consumers, we do not like to go and scan, right? We do not like to go and check our labels. So the ones who do the checking are hopefully governments, NGOs, media, and dedicated organizations. So for the consumer, the direct benefit is that you can more trust the labels and trust the brands of your industry. But something that we're working towards is actually the level of allergies is increasing globally. And for people who have allergies, and I'm sure there must be quite a lot of them in the call here, it's really difficult to know what you can eat and what you can't eat, because the labels don't say what you need them to say. And that is what we're really keen to solve with an infrastructure like this, and with a lot of other applications that help that, that notion of personalized nutrition come true, where, your nutrient requirements are actually matched with the products that you eat. So that's sort of the benefit for consumers.
Okay. Well, by the way, we want to make this session as interactive as possible. So you can raise your hand at any time if you want to argue or qualify your question a little more. So feel free to do that. So next question is Edward. He said, will open food chain support in the trade from cacao producers to food processors, for instance, by giving more bargaining power to the small cacao producers and removing layers from intermediate buyers from the supply chain? I can repeat.
Yeah, Simone, I guess that's your question.
I think so. Anything can happen. And we know there's so much inefficiencies and power inequalities going on. So once everything is more transparent, we can solve a lot of those problems. And obviously it improves the power position of the small producer, because he's visible. He's now totally invisible, So there's a lot of ideas on how it works, which are not really true. We investigated the last few years a lot on how it works here in Peru. In certain areas, and we came to some surprises, really interesting. So when this is all open and this information is available, then there's a lot of changes going to come, and we actually have no idea how it's really going to impact. It's going to be really interesting.
That's a great cliffhanger. Yeah, but I think that's really why, with internet, right? We all are so aware on the impact of the digital age, right? And it really makes everybody more verifiable and more, it really gives a push towards responsibility and more fairness. And the more Web3, in a good way, of course, the better everybody ends up. So it should really be able to break some of the strong power imbalances that a lot of supply chains have. And we're seeing that, right? It's happening.
Nura raised her hand. I don't know if Nura, you made it. Yeah, if you still want to give an argument or not. But if you want to argue something, we can wait.
Well,
if
I
not,
will ask quickly.
yeah.
I asked. Yes, well, thank you for the presentation. I was 10 minutes late, so I'm afraid that my question might have been answered in the beginning. I was just wondering if for the, I call it pilot, but I mean large project rather, in Colombia, you already have cocoa buyers on board securing the marketing of the first season or two. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. Good question, because it's key, right? If we're gonna work with farmers and then we don't have businesses which keep on going in the supply chain, it's like we're doing nothing. But in Colombia, yes, we have two bigger cacao companies who are collaborating, and they're very keen on this because they also need to comply the new regulation. So that's their principal motivation. The same here in Peru. We're working for a few years already with various local and international companies who also need a solution to comply. I'm very happy with this solution because they do traceability, but only in-house. And this is going much further than their in-house actions. So also the promise of it to be interoperable sounds really good, because they don't want to do again or throw down the trash what they already advanced on the traceability side. So
thank you very much.
Yes, and Marieke also is working on some contacts with bigger companies, which we obviously need, because the idea is to have it worldwide applied.
No, very interesting, and maybe we could have follow-up talks later, but I'm learning a lot. Thank you.
Nice. Yeah. And maybe on the interoperability part, right? Because I don't know who's working in the fields with farmers here, and really it's the same in the Netherlands as it is in Peru, for example, or Colombia. Farmers have a lot of sort of farm management systems that get offered to them, right? And it's often difficult, if not impossible, for farmers to assess what is a better system compared to the other system. So how we envision Open Cacao Chain is not to add another complexity to it, but to work with the existing software plurality, right? So we see Open Cacao Chain, for example, as a plugin to an existing farm management system. So it can enhance the value of that particular farm management system. So it doesn't require an additional upload of information. It just makes the data more interoperable and movable, and also more earnable. And I'm sure this is not a proper English word, but it really creates new business models, right?
Okay, we have more questions. So yeah, let's try to read all the questions of the chat. Henk asked, what type of certification for sustainability is recommended for the farmers that attend the initiative? So,
Simone, rainforest, right?
Yes, I will repeat it. What type of certification for sustainability is recommended for the farmers that attend the initiative?
No, we don't need certification. We can just be on the infrastructure. Okay. We do need compliance. So we do need georeferenced georeferencing information on where the cacao is produced, when it's produced, and some information on the legal situation of the land, because that's also a requisite. And what we want to do on top of that, because this is the minimal requirement, we want to also include information on living income prices. So which if there's a, no, it's not fair, it's a living income price paid to the farmer. And then we can keep on building. We can say, okay, this cacao also has a certification of Rainforest Alliance or Fair Trade, or this is from agroforestry land, or this farmer has fantastic. I don't know. We can go as crazy as you want to. We can also include CO2 emissions reduction efforts, and try to make payment schemes for that. Yes, so we don't need only farmers who have certifications. We can also try to find new ways of giving a value to some effort of the farmer. So, which also maybe might be another road. I don't want to say replace certification, but new ways to reward farmers for their efforts, and to have ways of verifying they're really doing it. So this is the big challenge.
Okay, we have now a different question by Nelson. Nelson said, what's Open Food Chain plan for Africa? Most of the over 20,000 farmers on our Farmer Field School network across Africa don't have access to the internet.
Well, let's get into a call after this session. I mean, we're really, so we see Open Food Chain having most impact in other countries than the Netherlands, and definitely in Africa. So we're actually looking to get access to that. And the reason why Open Cacao Chain is the solution in MiCacao, right? The project is called MiCacao, and the solution is Open Cacao Chain. MiCacao is focused on Latin America, but as we all know, most cacao is produced in Africa, in only 2 countries. So we're really keen to trial and test the Open Cacao Chain solution in Africa as soon as we can.
And how is it in Africa? Because here, myself, I am living outside of the city, and I've always been suffering from the internet connection, but now Starlink arrived. And so not only me, but also many, many farmers in rural areas can access the internet. So I am quite confident that the same thing is going to happen in rural areas all over the world. That will change everything.
Yeah, and Kenya actually has one of the highest adoptions of mobile phone usage, right? This is thanks to M-Pesa and a few of the really strong phone companies. So it's easier to get farmers connected on Open Food Chain in some African countries than it is in some European countries. So let's put it to work. That's, I think, the conclusion, right? In cacao and in other supply chains.
Okay, first I have to say that, for example, Mirtil said that they are interested, La Gloria Valencia too, so Patricia will also try to catch that. Also, we have other people interested, and now I'm reading some of the questions in the meetup. So for example, Marcus said, the cacao industry has a huge market projections and is expected to grow from 48 billion to nearly 68 billion by 2029. In your opinion, what does the cacao industry need to improve in general? It's a broad question.
That's yours, Simone, I think. I can add to it. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Yeah.
Can you repeat it, Max? I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's a large and broad question. But, well, Marcus said, the cacao industry has a huge market projections and is expected to grow from 48 billion to 68 billion by 2029. In your opinion, what does the cacao industry need to improve in general?
The cacao industry in general, what do they need to improve?
Yeah.
For what? For use to use in order to use the solution, or in order to? Or,
No. So what needs to change in the global cacao industry? What are sort of the key things that need to change?
Interesting question. It's really broad, because it's actually asking for the key problems, right?
Yeah.
What we see here, and we know the same in Africa, cacao production is not very profitable. It's not profitable. And certification seems help a little bit, but now we have climate change. And climate change makes cacao more vulnerable. Here we have a lot of plagues and diseases in the plantations. So also organic farmers, they see their harvest drop. So they're like, oh, and they go to use some pesticides, and then the organic stuff is found in the laboratories. They do the test and they see some residues of pesticides. And so it's like a vicious circle, because the prices don't improve, the farmers have dropping yields, they cannot cope. And so what's happening here in rural areas, the population gets older and older, the kids go to the cities, they don't want to repeat the parents' situation, and getting poorer and poorer. So what we need in cacao is make it more profitable for the producer, because otherwise we won't have much cacao in a few years, because younger people don't want to live this life in poverty. So if we're going to digitalize and make it possible to get a good reward for the farmers, this is a big step. And well, we all know we need to have more regenerative agriculture and zero deforestation. So probably if I'm talking now about the production side, but in the whole production chain, we need to improve efficiencies, definitely. Yes.
Great. I saw a hand raised by Sergio. Sergio is part of the project, if I'm not wrong, but I don't know, Sergio, if you want to add something else.
No, I think that Simone addressed the main point, and it is that we need to create financial incentive for farmers, because up to now the incentives just cover the product of cacao, but ignores the other dimensions of social, environment, and economic impacts that they produce by being in the cacao industry. But Simone's answer was just terrific.
Okay. I read in the meetup, by the way, that Luis Fernando Velázquez Leal, he said, conocer sobre oportunidades de colaboración. He wanted to know some collaboration opportunities. So I will try to get back to him in the meetup. I don't know if he's in the call. There are also more questions, one by Luis Fernando, no, one by Exik. He said, how will the ownership of food commodities / our data related to it work? How will the ownership of food commodities work?
Yeah, that's a major question, right? That's about how data ownership models change in a new internet space where we have Web3, and what it implies to the ownership of that data. And this is actually the key reason why we jumped onto blockchain in 2017, because having an immutable data ledger, an immutable data infrastructure, allows a very clear track of data ownership. So the whole notion of who owns what data and who can earn on data becomes much more workable within a Web3 environment. So not only the ownership of data is more clear, but definitely the move of data becomes very transparent and clear, and you can start adding business models on that data that are not available or possible in Web 2. I hope that answers the question.
Okay. These are the last 7 minutes of the meeting. We have 2 more comments in the chat. One from Edward. He said, I have some difficulties to see this. Go beyond certification. How can I be sure as a food processor, retailer, or consumer that the cacao that is used is indeed of organic, fair trade quality?
Yeah, I'm keen to take that because of my experience in compliance processes. So the current situation is that you know that a product has a label, and that gives you the guarantee that the producer of the brand put that label on its sticker, on its etiquette. But that's all you can be sure of. Now, if you have a data infrastructure where a producer can say, I did not use any fertilizer, then an auditor in the field can go and check if that is true, because it's on a public open ledger, can confirm that that is the case, and then you have the certainty that that is the case, right? So that will really change the role of auditors and certifiers. And ideally, we need standards, right? We need organizations who can say this is good, this is bad, and this may be in between. So we do need the roles of auditing companies. We do need the roles of standard setting organizations, but they need to become more digitized and work on an open public infrastructure. That is hopefully some part of the answer to that question.
Yeah, Edward? Yeah, if you want to say something else, Edward, you can. You feel totally free. Okay, and if not, with the emoji, it's enough. Okay, so we also have a comment by Puban. He said, we advocate that farmers should be paid for data that enables downstream actors to make sustainability claims and realize better market retail prices. We'd be interested in building a plugin for farmers to offer packets of sustainability data they create. So that's a comment by Puban.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll take that on.
Yeah, there's only 5 more minutes, and we have many questions in the meetup. So no worries, because I will make sure that all the questions are answered in a moment. And Puvan, if you want to say something else, feel free.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that that the context of what I'm saying is that we shouldn't be promising again what certification promised. So certification originally promised that farmers would get higher prices, they get paid, they get market access, they get all of those things, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen for 20 years. So all that, we should make sure that we avoid additional cost that the farmer has to incur to learn a new system with the promise of something that may or may not happen. The fact that the EU has required these things to be reported is the problem of the companies, not the problem of the farmers. And they shouldn't be pushing this problem again to smallholder farmers and say, if you don't deliver the information you need, we're not buying from you. That is, again, what's been happening, forever. And we should be conscious that this doesn't help the oppression of farmers.
Fantastic, exactly. We need to turn the vicious circle, right? We really need to cut it and change the course of the future.
I see a comment, but I see that Nelson raised his hand. So Nelson, feel free to say anything you want.
Okay, nice to meet everyone. This is Nelson from Nigeria. I'm also a producer, so is my team, Elvicas Venture. So adding to what Puvan was saying, I believe farmers like myself, we actually aren't producing for the money, because if you see the benefits of what we produce, usually go to the sellers, to the big players who come and purchase the product and export it. So we always like to see people appreciating our work, because no matter how they pay the producers, they can't pay them enough, because our goal is to feed the community. And if we don't get the return for a return, I mean the benefits, most of the farmers stop doing that, especially when it's a rural community like my location, where a farmer can decide not to produce for the next year because he already have enough for his family. But we have more than that, because we have people who are displaced and they can't join the producing group, where they live on the support of just few. So we would also like to benefit from what we do by getting the benefits from the players. Like I think the plans for food chain, they should also include a way to make sure that the producers get the full benefit of the activities.
Okay, I see. Well, we need to wrap up the session, but Simone, if you want to say something else, and I see that there's some people joining, maybe because there was a confusion with the hour, but I will solve that. So Simone, if you want to give your argument.
I wanted to send some applause for what Nelson just said, but I raised my hand. Great, Nelson, totally agree. Yes,
Oh.
the applause.
Perfect. Patricia raised her hand. Well, we need to wrap up the session, so we'll conclude now the Web3 for Food Cacao Supply Chains event. And we hope that you liked it, that you found it interesting. And if there are any unanswered questions, we will make sure that they are answered. We will record this session, so we will post it on the YouTube for anyone that has doubts. Okay. And small reminder that we have a very cool Telegram group in which there are a lot of experts, as I said before. So if you want to know more about us, do not hesitate to join and comment whatever you like. Nothing else. Thank you very much for your attention, and we're waiting for you for future events. See you soon.
Excellent. Oh yeah,
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.